Welcome to Empath 5D Revolution, where sensitive souls are gathering to receive tools, perspectives, and practices for anchoring the light codes during chaotic times. I'm your host, Reverend Dr. Stephanie Redfeather, author of the award-winning international best-selling book, The Evolutionary Empath, and Empath Activation Cards. In this interview, my special guest is Judith Corvin Blackburn. She is a longtime friend, colleague, and Master Heart sister. Judith is an award-winning author, internationally known teacher, transpersonal psychotherapist, and shamanic minister. For over 50 years, half a century, this woman has been inspiring people to step into joy, purpose, and inner authority, reclaiming their true soul nature, so that collectively we can transform planet Earth into the loving, peaceful, creative place it is meant to be. She is the author of 4 books, including Activate Your 5D Frequency and the coming book, The 6D Ascension Journey. The subject of her interview today is reclaiming joy and purpose, what to do when your frequency crashes. I can't wait. Welcome, Judith.
Me either. No. Thanks so much, Stephanie. Of course, I love you dearly, and it's always great to be able to be participating in your offering this to the world. So,
Thank you. Thank you. So, to give people an opportunity just to get to know you a little bit more, what's the sort of Reader's Digest condensed version of what brought you onto this path?
well, I when I was 12 years old, my father and I had an interesting discussion about why he was an atheist.
Hmm.
And I had been brought up with this pretty secular Judaism, Sunday school, but no real faith or connection. And I just found his ideas really interesting and decided I was an atheist too.
Hmm.
And so I went through, but it didn't mean a lot to me. It just was like, oh, the idea of some guy in the sky never connected.
Mhm.
And so in that sense, I freed myself. And when I got into my 20s, when I was interested in astrology, I was doing yoga. I didn't think of it as a spiritual path. I just thought about, oh, this looks like something interesting, so I'll do it. And when I was right around 27, I was going through some really deep astrological transits that led up to my Saturn return, which everyone goes through at 28, 29, 30. Um, I started reading the book, which actually you can see, Yogananda's Autobiography of a Yogi.
Hmm.
And what I would do, I guess I was working for myself. Yeah, I had actually started I was interested in holistic counseling. I had just gotten my master's degree in social work, and 2 other friends and I started a practice together. I worked a couple of years after graduate school in a mental health center that was unbelievably dysfunctional and interesting. If you, the staff, not the client, were probably
Okay.
dysfunctional as the clients or more. Um, and I learned a lot. But then I got together with 2 other friends of mine from graduate school, and we created this group that did holistic counseling and offered some pretty interesting things. So in some ways, I was already on the path, but it wasn't until a friend of mine gave me the autobiography of a yogi, and I started reading a few pages at a time every morning, and then I would do a little bit of yoga. And my whole psyche began to open up. And so on one very interesting full moon, I started having these spiritual experiences. And I call them my conversionary experiences because uh, it, my consciousness expanded. At one point, some tears were coming down my face, and I felt like I was in a state of grace. And I wasn't brought up with the concept of grace. So that was very interesting how that came through. I was probably interested in reincarnation way before that, but this started coming in a different way. The other thing that happened in this experience was I also realized because it was like the veils started unfolding, and I had been smoking pot, what they call weed now. It's to show you how old I am. So, my consciousness was altered a little, but it wasn't, you know, I was, I don't, wasn't that altered, but it altered enough that my psyche could open up like this. But as it opened, what I realized is my ego was not strong enough or developed enough for it to keep going. And I felt it and I experienced it and it changed my life, but I stopped it because I knew I had to do more growth. I had emotional healing to do. However, since then, everything shifted.
Mm.
So, because I experienced, you could call it God, goddess, source. I experienced it viscerally,
Yeah.
and that became a guiding force, basically.
Mhm.
So that's how I got on the path.
Yes, yes. I just love people's origin stories. And one of the things that I wanted to give each speaker an opportunity to do is to offer a training or an experiential piece. And so, we talked before we hit record about kind of an order we were going to go in, but Spirit's already changing things a little bit. And so I would love for you to bring in your heart meditation and connection to the 5D frequencies, because I feel like there's going to be more available to our listeners and watchers when the field is open. And then we'll have that conversation and talk about challenge you've overcome and your book and your experience with 5D frequencies inside of that space of opening. So let me hand the floor over to you to bring us into that space.
Okay. I always like to start my classes out with this. One of the things that I have come to understand about 5D frequency, and I am incorporating 6D frequency into this, which perhaps we'll have time to talk about or not, um, is that it is not an intellectual concept. Even though you can understand it conceptually, it doesn't really click until you feel it. And what I found is that it's actually quite easy to bring people into that state. Now, some of you watching this may be already feeling, very expansive and very loving and very open. Or you might be in the middle of a stressful day or morning or evening and going, okay, so I'll check this out. Doesn't matter. But I want to take you into this meditation so that you can really feel the energy inside yourself. And that will give you a baseline, especially for those of you who've never realized that this is what fifth dimensional frequency is. This will give you a baseline. So, if you will, close your eyes and just begin to put all your attention onto your breath. Becoming fully aware as you exhale. And fully aware as you inhale. And just allow your breath to take you into a deeper and deeper and deeper state of relaxation. Releasing any concerns, releasing anything that's come before this moment, and releasing anything that might come after this moment. Just putting all your focus on the act of your breathing. And as you begin to feel more and more relaxed, open, present, as you begin to realize that you've dropped more deeply into your body, I want you to take a moment and perhaps rub your hands together until they create a certain warmth. And at that point, I just want you to put your hands over your heart space and let yourself breathe into this warmth. I'd like you to imagine as you do this that you can inhale tiny golden spirals of light and allow those spirals to travel through every cell in your body, calming, soothing, and activating all your cells, all 70 trillion of your cells. On the exhale, I want you to push out any concerns that might be trying to creep back in. Any thoughts, any expectations. And just keep all your attention onto your heart. Little by little, begin to feel that area both relax and open. Perhaps pondering something you love, whether it's something you love to do, whether it's something in nature, whether it's a child or a lover or an animal or a dear friend. Just allow your heart to fully feel this love. And using the breath to just breathe in and out of that area. And as your heart fills out more and more with love, I'd like you to envision sending that to every cell in your body. Just begin to feel that love travel everywhere through you. You may begin to feel loving presence, perhaps your guides, totems, angels, surrounding you as you do this. For a moment, I want you to focus a little bit on the area that's about 2 or 3 inches above the center of your heart chakra. And just intuitively feel an area that feels even lighter. And if you can feel that area that's lighter, the Egyptians, when people passed over, suggested that the heart be light as a feather. So this is the divine heart. This is the part of your heart chakra that connects you directly to divine love and support. It is also what connects you to joy. And if you can begin to feel that joyfulness, again, just let that all course through your cells. Once again, bathe yourself in that love. Perhaps start it above your head. Let it come down through all your body to your feet. Send a little into our Mother Earth. And then envision sending this love out to every being on the planet. And realize what a remarkably wonderful world we can create. And so, whenever you're ready, allowing that feeling to still be permeating through your cells, just go ahead and open your eyes and realize that maybe took 3 minutes. And what it did is it shifted your frequency. Now, I will say sometimes we have resistance, okay? Sometimes it's don't tell me what to do resistance. Sometimes it's no, I just I'm too cranky. I can't go there resistance. I mean, there's a lot of reasons. Um, or another important one is no, it feels scary to have my heart so open because in 3D it can be scary if you don't know how to protect yourself. If you had resistance, that's fine. But my experience is that many doing this meditation do break through that and find their frequency has shifted. And they are actually vibrating at what I will call a 5 and 6 dimensional frequency, which is what we as humans are designed to do. This is how we're really supposed to live, not in the chaos and the stress and the suffering.
So beautiful. And it's I would venture to say it's simple, but it's not easy because just all of the psychological, the old belief systems, wounds, triggers, fears, skepticism, all of that stuff, it's so easy to tear down. And I have done a lot of hard work in my life. I've been physically strong. I've done physical hard work. I was in the Air Force. I have done a lot of deep inner work. And I am discovering there's, you know, I'm sure you would agree, it doesn't matter how much work you've done, there's always more to do, there's always another level. And I'm learning that my mind is not as strong and disciplined as I thought it was, because exactly what you're talking about, right? You can hit those frequencies, but to hold them, to stay there, it is a muscle. It is something you have to practice and keep your intention on, because it is so easy to get pulled out. So talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, good, Stephanie, because I think that's really, really important. Once people have experienced that frequency, they're like, oh, well, I'm supposed to keep this. Well, good luck. Try not coming back as a human. It's just not the way it works. And when our souls incarnate, and perhaps when we're not incarnated, we're here to learn. And so there's always going to be challenge. It doesn't have to be suffering challenge. There's a big difference. But there's always going to be some challenge to help us grow more, expand more. And the real trick is to be able to be supportive and loving to ourselves when we're not currently able to hold that frequency, and to understand it's a natural part of the process. It's not like, bam, got it.
Yeah,
It just
yeah,
doesn't work that way.
yeah. When I first learned to meditate, and I'm sure you would share a similar experience, and then I taught meditation classes, like one of the techniques is a mindfulness meditation where you just notice what's going through your mind, and then you have a centering word or a centering phrase that brings you back. And it's easy to go, oh, my mind's so busy and I get off track all the time. And then I'm thinking about my grocery list, and then I'm running the conversation through my head with my boss, and blah and blah and blah. But if you didn't have those things, you wouldn't have the opportunity to practice bringing yourself back to center.
There it is. you know, and the other piece that you said, which I think is so important, is it's mindfulness. I call it self-observation, and also to keep one sense of humor. I mean, that would probably be at the top of my list. We are all bumbling through. I don't care what we've accomplished. I don't care of any all the soul lessons we've learned, right? We're still bumbling through on some level. And to be able to laugh at it, it's not an easy place to be, planet Earth, especially now that we're in, it probably hasn't been for about, I don't know, 10, 12,000 years. Um, and there's a lot of polarity that one has to learn to move through. Um, but to understand that we have signed on for this really interesting and somewhat humorous experience
Mhm.
because we have the ability to know exactly how we want to be,
Yeah, yeah.
but we still have to deal with being human.
Right, right. And for
It's
those of you
comical.
listening, I have to tell you that Judith is the perfect person to be the bearer of this message of being in joy and remembering to look at things with humor. My natural instinct is to get very serious and to feel the heaviness. And so I so appreciate Judith because she's always got a smile, she's always got a laugh, she always has a way of staying light even in the face of heavy things. And so is there more that you want to say about humor and cultivating the space of joy?
Oh, let me think for a minute. Actually, I'm going to close my eyes and see what wants to come through. When we're observing ourselves and in that mindful place, but simultaneously playful, all right? Because, well, I have two things to say. The first is, um, this is not that serious a journey. It's, I mean, you can make it serious, and it does um, hurt my heart that people are going through such suffering. But even in suffering, people can have humor. Um, we were, I think, made to be able to see the lightness and the silliness of, okay, soul, come into body and go, oh my God, what have I done? And, and sort of keeping that perspective as you go along can help enormously. Because one of the things that happens is we are so trained to judge ourselves and to be harsh with ourselves, which only lowers our frequency. It makes it much more difficult, makes the journey much harder.
Yeah.
So just being able to observe when the judgment comes, pat that inner judge on the head and say, go away for now, or, you know, zip it, or, well, or maybe you could be nicer. Thank you for trying to tell me something, but you're wrong. How's that?
Mhm.
So, but it is those judgments that really keep our frequency lower. One of the things. Um, the other thing, I had a really interesting experience decades ago after my spiritual awakening, probably about maybe 15 or so years afterwards. I was falling asleep, or maybe I was just waking up, but it was nighttime. It wasn't like morning. And I got the sense of this presence of a group of men in black robes and very religious looking, priest like looking. And they were kind of trying to tell me to join them. And I pondered it because they looked kind of holy. And then I thought, they don't have a sense of humor. I am not messing with these people. And
Mhm.
I sent them away.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
there it is.
Yeah. Well, and just, looking at my own patterns, some of this is a lineage piece that has been passed down from my matrilineal line of, right, suffering, and that it's hard to hold joy. But something else I think that bears mentioning is we are indoctrinated, whether we realize it or not, especially in Western culture, to be victimized, right? And so it's hard. It's like, do I deserve to feel joy? Or if somebody else's joy, there have been plenty of times in my life where I'm like, how dare you laugh and have a good time and be joyful? Look how much I'm suffering. But if I look underneath that, it's like, you know what? I've been going back into the conversations with God books lately, and one of the things God says is in every moment we get to choose who we want to be, how we want to show up. Every moment is a statement of who we are. And in that realization, it's like, ah, shit, I can't be a victim anymore. Or I mean, I can choose to, but
Oh, pull the rug right out from under you. Yes, we are very much programmed in victim consciousness, and the reverse or the opposite expression of that is domination consciousness. So, in order not to be a victim, you dominate and do harm to others. So you become the perpetrator, and it's all very 3D stuck, DNA closed down, and it's all. Really, the word that comes to me, it's not necessary. It's just not necessary. We don't have to suffer like that. Um, Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning. I don't know if you're familiar. Are you familiar with that, Stephanie? I mean, it was written a little bit after World War II. He was in the concentration camps as a teenager. And once he got out, he became a psychologist and he formed something called logotherapy or something like that, which didn't catch on, but this book really caught on. And he was able to describe what went on from a really higher spiritual perspective. So he didn't get pulled into victimization, even though, the circumstances were horrific. And he has a little piece in there that I think I put it into my book that's coming out. Can't remember which book I put it in. I think it's the 60 Journey book, where they were being transported to another work site. He was with the, other prisoners there. And it was right at dawn, and they were in this, really awful kind of compartment moving. It wasn't like a luxury train, it was like cattle train, but it had a window with bars that they could see out of, and they saw the sunrise. And the they all were just awed, like AWED, not ODD, but so, even in the worst of circumstances, and that's really what you were saying, that minute to minute, you can find um, the light,
Yeah. Yeah.
and St. Francis of Assisi, thrown in a dungeon for a year, that's when he opened up spiritually. So,
Right.
yeah,
Right.
it's 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 available.
Yeah.
We
And
have to give ourselves permission,
yeah,
right?
yes, yes.
And
Because what we're talking about really is this bouncing back forth between the 3D and 5D, or maybe not even bouncing so much as they both exist at the same time, where we are walkers between the worlds. We have a foot in each world. And so, when you talked about achieving that, frequency, that 5D frequency, achieving that vibrational state, and then thinking, okay, there's something wrong with me if I can't stay here, right? We make ourselves wrong, we beat ourselves up, and we're like, no, every time we fall out, it's an opportunity to one, just observe what happened, right? Cultivate that inner witness, and then choose, work the practice to come back into it. So talk about that a little bit more, advice for navigating between the 3D and 5D, and what you do when you notice your frequency has lowered.
yes, Okay, I have five thoughts at once, so let me try to get onto one of them. Um, so I think I'll just talk about what I do, which is okay, I notice it. And by simply noticing it, it takes the edge off. So sometimes I just notice it because I'm feeling cranky. And I have a whole repertoire of things I do. I journal. I find if I write it out, it kind of dissipates. I call in my light team and try and feel them kind of moving through me. I laugh at myself a lot, like, oh, there it goes. All right. I, I find for me, if I wake up in the middle of the night and I'm having difficulty getting back to sleep, my mind starts. "Eh, It's not quite a rabbit hole, but it gets on the edge of it. Oh, I got to do this, or will this ever happen? Blah, blah, blah. So but I watch it and I do go as easy on myself as I can, which is to give myself credit. Oh, yeah, so I see that. I have some humor about it because I am bumbling through. And then going through different things, whether it's journaling, whether it's just breathing, something that really works for me because one of the things that I think a lot of us are feeling, and this is really your work, Stephanie, about empaths, as we raise our frequency, we become more empathic, is we're getting overloaded with energy, some being the pain in the world, some being the light codes, the photons that are blasting us from above, but also they've been absorbed in the middle of the earth, so they're coming from both sides, and it's wonderful. They're bringing good stuff, but it's overload. So I find if I go out and I sit in the sun for like 5 minutes and I just feel that sun on me, it really helps me shift out of um, out of the overload. It just really shifts my energy. And anything in nature, listening to the birds. So, those are just a few techniques. I think people do need to experiment on their own. Um, for me, I'm very kinesthetic
Mm-hmm.
and clairsentient. So I have to feel it first. Some people can listen to music and feel it. What you want to do though is you want to feel it travel through your cells best you can. If that's something that seems foreign, play around with it, make it up. What would it feel like if I just breathed humor, or breathed joy, or breathed well-being, or breathed presence into my heart and cells?
Yeah, I love that. So I want to ask a question, kind of change directions just a little bit, because all of us at some point in our spiritual journey, we have hit one or probably many, forks in the road, bumps, something that turns our world upside down. And so I want people to really get that we're, just because you and I are talking and we're calling ourselves experts in a field, it doesn't mean that we just arrived and we don't have to deal with 3D stuff. And so I would love to hear whatever story seems relevant to talk about something you overcame and how your spiritual work, helped with that.
Well, I will say emotional healing, it really is key, which I had a lot of to do. Um, I was fortunate because I did not come from a scary household or a overtly, physically or sexually abusive household, which so many of us have. But I came from a very emotionally messed up household. And I joke that my mother was my first client when I was 7. And therapy was failure. It was a failure. So, and I was so grateful, frankly, for the consciousness coming of age in the 60s and early 70s, because that allowed me to break free. And when I broke free, it allowed me to take paths where I could do my healing. So that was a really important piece. Another is my husband of We've been together 45 years. Way back when we first got together, and I'd be all dramatic and stuff. And he's a good Libran. Well, now he's more dramatic. He repressed it after I learned to just calm down. But it took him several decades for me to go, oh my God, he's a drama king. Who knew? But anyway, he got me over my drama queen stuff early on,
Mhm.
which really was very useful. Um, the other piece, and I think it's worth talking about, I've been really lucky actually since that conversionary experience. Well, of course, I've had challenges, and um, my mother, right until she died at 92, was still telling me what a rotten daughter I was because I went off and did my own thing. Um, but um, for the most part, they were not intense, nothing that I couldn't move through pretty quickly. Um, Even though, of course, it would be up and down for a while. But in recent years, my hardest challenge is one of my adult daughters who's has been going through a really hard time for about 5 years. And this was a child, a teenager, a young adult who just was shining her soul. And through a series of things, that has shifted. And she has my grandson who's now 15, and really, I think he's a high level empath, but he's got a lot of mental health labels instead of trying to help him through what's really going on. And of course, I could fix it, right? But but it's not up to me. So I had to learn some really important things. One, of course, the sadness for these people I adore, and knowing I can't fix it. It's not my journey. And the other piece is that it's still okay for me to feel joyful, that my suffering with or for my daughter, not that she wants me to, but were I to choose that, wouldn't help her, wouldn't help the world, wouldn't support the work I'm here to do in the world. So I think that's my, most current
Yeah. Yeah. And I think
lesson.
beautiful advice that is challenging. I know for me personally, and probably a lot of other people, because it's like, who am I to be happy when other people are suffering? How
I
dare
think
I
women get that big
Right.
time.
How dare I flaunt my joy? Because the flaunt is a judgment by the people who are not experiencing the joy. And I've been in that place of how dare you while I'm suffering, but I understand it. And so that's part of this just the contrast, right? Sitting with the contrast between the 3D and the 5D.
Yes. And being able to expand our containers to hold that.
Yes.
And to also know, which I stress over and over again, we help the world when we're in joy, not selfish, self-serving, oh, sensation, but real heart joy because it feeds into that hologram that we're all a part of.
Yeah.
And those people that you're going, oh, how do they, go take your joy someplace else. They modeled for you,
Yeah.
right? And so even when we're in our sort of ego victimy stuff, which we all get into sometime, um, to see that it doesn't have to be that way,
Yeah.
I think is really important.
Yeah, and I want to pluck out what you're saying and add some additional synonyms to it that what we're talking about here is not spiritual bypass. It's not light polarized, right? We're not talking about just wear a smile and be happy and say affirmations and pretend everything is fine when really you just want to like go beat the crap out of something, right? There's there's a we're talking about a genuine peace, expansiveness, openness, which I find always comes back to what you were talking about, is just being in the present moment with the simplest things.
Right. And what you said, Stephanie, about spiritual bypass is really important. I work a lot and it's sort of a joke because I know, I do have fairly light energy, but man, I work a lot with anger. And I really work a lot with students and clients around this. Bypass means you try not to feel your feelings. You try not to feel that you'd like to beat the crap out of somebody when, wait a second, maybe you would. And it's okay. It's not okay to go do it, but it's okay. These are our human feelings. And usually when we get an intense feeling like that, it's because we've stored a lot of other small feelings that sort of
Yeah.
come into a big feeling that needs to get dealt with. And I know you've already interviewed Tammy, but I'm reading her next book that both of our books come out on September 9th. Um, and she states it in such beautiful ways of these emotional triggers and why it's so important for us to really focus on the gift that even if it's uncomfortable, and we're not used to it and it's scary and it's a whole lot of other things. It is what our soul is needing to grow. And we don't have to suffer with it. We might have to go, but we don't have to go back into that suffering victim stuff.
And it's not unspiritual to be angry, and it's not unevolved, right, to be angry. And I think there's a lot of judgment or just assumptions that kind of get made when we distill down messages that we've heard, where it's like, oh, there's something wrong with me if I feel these things. No, no, there, no, please,
Right.
acknowledge
There is
them.
nothing wrong with us to feel anger. We're born with that capacity.
Yeah.
That is so important.
Yeah, it's always
Um,
what you do with it, right? It's so
right.
you can't shift, heal, or transform a thing that you do not first acknowledge even exists.
Exactly. And you can feel hugely angry with the clear intent that it do no harm.
Right.
Don't put your anger on someone else. You work with those feelings. And I have like 15 different techniques. I
Mhm.
teach people about how to work with it. But if we repress how we feel, that's what creates our getting stuck or doing bypass where we our whole self is not involved,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah, and I know that, you wanted to talk about some common cultural beliefs that undermine our ability to operate in our daily 3D lives from a 5D perspective. And so we're kind of talking about those things, but I want to sort of formally say those words and invite you to share more about that.
Yeah, well, we're trained to be dysfunctional. We're all conditioned. We have such a dysfunctional society. And I mean, Western culture in general, I think perhaps in and the East has its own stuff. I think the East probably doesn't do very well with emotions either. But Western culture is just brilliant at messing people up. Um, and ancestral wounding and trauma. And I mean, one thing that just breaks my heart about the wars that are going on, and this may trigger people, but the deporting people and ripping them from their homes is it creates more trauma. And when we create trauma, it affects our world, whether we're, hiding from it or not, or, thinking we've got it all covered because we're living in some mansion on the hill. But we're all connected.
Yeah.
And so, okay, so that's my little rant around how dysfunctional the society is. Um, and what happens in that process is people then walk through life, whether they look like they're on top or not, with a sense of unworthiness, feeling not good enough, feeling not lovable enough. This is why, whether you're addicted to shopping or substances or whatever, It's because you're not filled internally, and we are set up to not be able to support the beautiful soul that we really are. So part of the ascension journey really is part of moving more and more so that we can hold that 5D 60 frequency more frequently. Okay, because that's what happens. It's like you still crash down, but for less and less and less time. um, is to really honor the fact, wait, we're not unworthy. Sure, we probably made mistakes. Perhaps we have some regrets. Perhaps we need to do what do they call it in 12 step, where you go to someone and
And you
you
make
like
amends.
amends,
Yeah.
right? Maybe we have amends. So what? Well, there's a favorite quote from some woman author. I can't remember who it is anymore. I read it decades ago again. Um, Good judgment comes from experience. Experience comes from bad judgment.
Mhm. Yeah, I like that. I-
Right. And we live in this one of the really dysfunctional patterns is perfectionism, thinking we're supposed to be perfect. Well, good luck. There's no way we can be perfect. So when we can love ourselves, flaws and all,
yeah.
et cetera, we all know that little litany, right? Um, then we're free to feel that joy and move where,
Yeah.
you know, more and more hold these higher frequencies, which in turn helps lift the frequency of the planet.
Right. And as we bring our conversation to a close here in a few minutes, I want to very specifically address, because it's a concept I think everybody sort of intuitively understands, but you and other experts and people who are working with 5D, we're still trying to distill a good definition of what exactly are 5D light codes, right?
Well, first I'm going to talk about the three. It's simple, like you said, it's simple, but we don't make it easy. We could, but we don't know how yet. The three main characteristics are unconditional love of self and others and everything, um, unbridled creativity, and unity consciousness that we understand we are interconnected with everything. And along with that comes learning how to release judgment and go into a state of love, what I call loving neutrality, where we're really heart-centered and but we've expanded our container. When we expand our frequency, we expand our container to hold all sides of things. Okay, we live right now in a world where all sorts of people think they have the truth, and it's all different truth. Maybe there's a piece of it here and a piece of it there. I don't know. But it's really about allowing the heart to lead and breaking free of conditioned, unhealthy responses and learning to acknowledge when we are triggered and what to do with that, right? So so the frequency oh well the light codes is a whole other thing. That's what opens our DNA, our star DNA, but we're gonna have to go for another interview on that one.
There's a lot to say there is, but I think it's important to recognize that to just speak to, since this summit is about acknowledging that we are in the 3D while walking in the 5D and ascending, that these 5D light codes are activating us, are lighting up dormant DNA, are calling parts of us forward. um and so just acknowledging and saying those things out loud, I think, are important for us to recognize that we're not crazy when we have these experiences.
Yes, yes, yes. Actually, we are blessed to have these experiences. And if the mind comes in and starts judging and scaring us, then our frequency can crash. Just notice,
Mhm.
work with the fears and judgments.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah.
And I think that what happens is, our DNA can get activated and it is being activated. And a lot of people, I think part of what's going on for people that don't know this is they don't know exactly what's happening. They feel it, but they can't wrap their hands or brain around it exactly. Um, and to understand that even as those codes open us up, we still have our emotional field and wounding and trauma that interfere with us just, I guess I'm going to say, surrendering
Mm.
to that openness. I mean, we have the ability to fight against it.
Yeah, yeah. And I think, it's important, at least my philosophy, and I think, yours is similar, is I always bring in the metaphor of the tree, that if you were able to magically look at any tree's root system underground, their roots are as broad and as deep as their canopy is tall and wide. And so to me, that speaks to our 3D work, the work that we do to heal our wounds and release, ancestral patterns and all of those things that exist in the 3D experience are just as important and are part of our ascension process, just as equally important to our time spent cultivating a higher frequency, being in a meditative state, working with crystals, oils, being in nature, energy healing, but all of these sorts of things, they they travel together. You can't do one without the other, or you become unbalanced, I would say.
I 100% agree, Stephanie. And that tree is a beautiful image. The image that I use is a foundation.
Mm.
If you don't have, because that's what those roots are for the tree. It feeds them, but it grounds them, right? It's a foundation. If you don't have a foundation and you start going up, you're going to topple
Mhm.
if that tree isn't connected by roots.
Yeah,
So yes, and it's not as sexy to do foundation work.
it,
It's
that is
not
the damn truth.
as much fun, but
Yep, yep,
but it is really, really, really important and satisfying. It
yeah,
can be, which is joyful.
right, right. Well, I want to take a moment to make sure people hear a couple of words about the free gift that you're offering, which is a downloadable meditation to activate your 5D light codes.
Yes, it is. Uh, it's all of a sudden I have no way to describe this.
Right.
It's going to be I set a pleasant place. I think I take people to the beach, and from there, um, help one feel viscerally and the energy of absorbing these light codes, which are coming in photons. From the sun, they're coming in from the central suns from other star systems. They're coming in, I'm sure, from the stars. Um, to just begin to be more conscious of that. And also, it is in the experience itself, it helps one feel into that higher frequency.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And so you can find Judith's meditation on her speaker page on the Summit website. I also encourage you to check out her books, because everything that we're talking about here it goes into much more detail in the books, of course. So,
And I could throw in, I am also going to be teaching my Starseed course
nice.
starting June 1st. So if people want to get on my website, by then my new website will be up. I'm excited. Uh,
Woohoo!
yeah.
That's
And, they can learn more about that as well.
excellent, excellent. So any final thoughts about, just kind of bringing it back to the title of your topic, what to do when your frequency crashes? Your final thoughts on
Uh,
that.
just remember, it's part of the journey. It's, and to go, the more easy and more supportive we can be of ourselves when we crash, one, the less time we'll spend crashing, so we'll feel better, but also just know this is the way it is. I have a hard time believing that somebody can just always be higher frequency and still be living on this planet, in this world, at this point in our evolution. I think at some point that, we're moving toward that shifting, but at least for the vast majority of us, not yet.
Yeah, yeah,
We're in process.
yeah. And what I hear in that is wherever you are, whoever you are, whatever your life looks like, you're normal. You're right right where you should be. You're never
Or,
not where where you should be.
right, you're healthy. And I always say to a client might say, "Is this normal?" And I go, "You don't need normal. You need healthy, because the norms are not where we want to go."
That's a great correction. So yes. Judith, I so appreciate your energy and your expertise. Thank you so much.
Oh, and thank you so much for having me on your beautiful summit, Stephanie. Well,
Absolutely.